Some anime entertain you, some anime move you, and some anime follow you into the dark. You finish the last episode, you put your phone down, you close your eyes, and something from what you just watched is already waiting for you there. Not because it was scary in the traditional sense, but because it asked you a question you weren't ready for, or showed you a world so disturbing it felt a little too real, or introduced you to a character so broken, so twisted, so completely beyond saving that you couldn't stop thinking about what made them that way. These are those anime, the ones that don't let go, the ones that follow you home. Berserk. Berserk begins as a story about a man with a sword, a massive sword. Too big to be called a sword, more like a slab of iron. Guts carries it across a medieval world that is trying to kill him at every turn. He fights monsters, he survives, he keeps moving. That sounds like a familiar premise. Then the eclipse happens, and everything you thought this story was gets dismantled completely. Berserk is not a story about triumph. It is a story about what happens when someone you trusted completely betrays you in the most devastating way imaginable. When the man Guts called his closest friend, the man he followed into battle, the man he believed in more than anything, uses him as a sacrifice. Every comrade they fought alongside is slaughtered. Guts watches each one die. He survives, but barely. And what remains of him after the eclipse isn't really survival. It's something else, something darker. What makes Berserk so genuinely disturbing is not the grotesque monsters or the brutal violence. It is the psychological portrait of a man who refuses to stop. Guts has every reason to collapse, every reason to give up. The world has given him nothing but pain since the moment he was born. He pushes forward anyway, not out of hope. Out of pure, furious refusal to be destroyed. And watching that refusal costs something. Because you start to wonder whether the thing keeping him alive is strength, or whether it's simply that the wound is so deep he can't stop moving long enough to feel it. That question will follow you. Because Berserk is ultimately not asking whether Guts will win, it's asking whether surviving something that should have broken you is the same thing as being okay. And it strongly suggests the answer is no. Hunter x Hunter. Most people go into Hunter x Hunter expecting a classic shonen. Colorful characters, tournaments, power levels, the usual formula. For a while, it delivers exactly that, and then the Chimera Ant arc begins, and the series quietly becomes something else entirely. The Chimera Ant arc starts as a story about a new threat, a new enemy to defeat. Then it keeps going, and slowly, methodically, it builds a case for something far more unsettling. Meruem is born as the perfect predator, stronger than anything alive, completely devoid of empathy. He begins consuming humans without thought, because to him, humans are simply fuel. But then he meets a blind girl named Komugi, a fragile, clumsy girl who beats him at Gungi, the only thing she has ever been good at. And Meruem, the being designed to be beyond human emotion, begins to change. Here's where things get genuinely horrifying. The most disturbing part of the Chimera Ant arc isn't the violence, it isn't the body horror or the deaths. It's the realization, slow and creeping, that the villain is becoming more human, and that the story is going to punish him for it. This arc doesn't give you a clean victory, it gives you a tragedy. And the particular cruelty of how it ends, what happens to Meruem and Komugi, is the kind of thing that sits with you for days. Because the series made you feel something for him, and then it took it away. The cruelty of that particular ending isn't brutal in a loud or violent way. It's brutal the way a quiet door closing is brutal. Final and complete and entirely without appeal. You don't get to argue with it, you just have to sit with what happened. That's not something you forget easily. Neon Genesis Evangelion? Neon Genesis Evangelion begins as a mecha anime about teenagers piloting giant robots to fight alien monsters. By episode 16, that description feels almost embarrassing. Shinji Ikari is 14 years old. He has been abandoned by his father. He has no real home, no reliable support, no stable foundation of any kind. And then he is handed the fate of the world. Not metaphorically. Literally. Pilot this machine or humanity ends. The series spends its first half building that premise with enough action to feel exciting. Then it starts peeling back the layers, and the layers underneath are devastating. Shinji doesn't want to be a hero. He never asked for this. He is terrified, overwhelmed, and completely alone in a way that very few anime protagonists ever genuinely feel. What makes Evangelion so disturbing is how honest it is about mental illness. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, in a quiet, suffocating, deeply personal way. The show climbs inside Shinji's psychology and refuses to leave. By the time the final episodes arrive, the series has abandoned its plot almost entirely and turned into something that feels closer to therapy than entertainment. It asks questions about identity, connection, self-worth, and the terror of being seen by another person. And it doesn't answer those questions. It leaves them with you, whether you wanted them or not. Evangelion doesn't just keep you up at night. It makes you question things you hadn't planned to question. Things about yourself. About whether you have been running from connection the same way Shinji has. About whether the walls you've built to protect yourself have quietly become a prison instead. Made in Abyss? Made in Abyss looks like a children's show. Bright colors, round character designs, and adventurous tone. A girl named Riko descends into a massive chasm called the Abyss, alongside a robot boy named Reg. The premise sounds charming, the first few episodes feel charming, and then the curse of the Abyss begins to reveal itself. The deeper you go, the more the Abyss costs you. Minor disorientation at the upper layers, physical illness further down, severe bodily damage in the deeper zones. And at the deepest layers, the cost is your humanity itself. Made in Abyss is structured like a descent into hell disguised as an adventure story. Every step deeper feels like a door closing behind you, and what makes it genuinely horrifying is that the characters keep going anyway. Riko keeps going, not because she doesn't understand the cost, because she does, and she accepts it. There's a specific episode in the second major arc of Made in Abyss that the community simply refers to as that episode. The content is disturbing enough that many viewers had to stop watching. It involves a child. It involves suffering that the series refuses to cut away from, and it forces you to sit with what the Abyss actually costs, not in an abstract way. In an immediate, visceral, impossible to ignore way. Made in Abyss is not what it looks like, and that gap between its appearance and its reality is part of what makes it so deeply unsettling, because the series weaponizes your initial comfort against you. It lets you fall in love with these characters in a cheerful, colorful world. Then it starts taking things from them, and from you. By the time the story reaches its most brutal moments, you are too invested to look away. You have to watch, and the series knows it. That's not an accident. That's craft. The cruelest kind. Paranoia Agent. Satoshi Kon was a filmmaker who understood one thing better than almost anyone else in anime. The line between reality and delusion is thinner than we want to believe. Paranoia Agent begins with a simple mystery. A young woman is attacked by a child on golden rollerblades wielding a bent baseball bat. A boy who becomes known as Lil Slugger. More people are attacked. A detective tries to find the pattern. And here's where things get disturbing. The people being attacked are all at breaking points. Under unbearable pressure, trapped by situations they can't escape. And the attack always comes right before the breaking point arrives. The real horror of Paranoia Agent isn't the attacker, it's the implication that people under enough psychological pressure can generate something that arrives to absorb the pressure for them, something that takes the hit so they don't have to. The series builds this premise into something increasingly surreal, increasingly uncomfortable, and ultimately devastating. By the end, the line between what is real and what has been collectively imagined has dissolved almost completely. Paranoia Agent doesn't explain itself. It doesn't tie everything together cleanly. It leaves you sitting in the ambiguity. And the ambiguity is the point. Satoshi Kon was interested in what we create to survive, and whether the things we create to survive end up destroying us instead. Think about that idea for a moment. Every coping mechanism, every defense, every story we tell ourselves to get through difficult periods, Paranoia Agent asks whether those things are helping us or simply delaying a confrontation we can't avoid forever. The answer the series suggests is not comforting, but it is honest. And honest is sometimes more terrifying than anything supernatural. That idea will follow you. Vinland Saga. Vinland Saga begins as a revenge story. A young boy named Thorfinn watches his father, the greatest warrior alive, die at the hands of a mercenary named Askeladd. From that moment, Thorfinn dedicates every breath to revenge. He fights alongside Askeladd. He gets stronger. He waits. It's a familiar structure. Then the moment arrives, and the series does something genuinely shocking. It refuses to let the revenge feel good. Because Thorfinn gets his opportunity, and it costs him something he didn't expect. Not his life. Something worse. His purpose. The real nightmare of Vinland Saga isn't the violence. The Vikings in this story are brutal in ways that feel historically authentic and deeply uncomfortable. Raids, massacres, slavery, the casual destruction of entire communities. The series doesn't glamorize any of it. It shows you what violence actually produces, not glory, trauma. And the character study at the center of the second arc, watching Thorfinn try to rebuild himself from nothing, from a person defined entirely by hatred into something else entirely, is one of the most honest explorations of recovery in any media. What keeps you up at night isn't the action. It's the question Vinland Saga keeps asking. What are you without the thing that has been driving you? What do you become when the hatred is finally gone? And whether anything you built on top of that hatred was real at all, or whether it was always just the hatred wearing a different face. Higurashi, When They Cry. Higurashi looks like a slice of life show about a boy moving to a small rural village. Keiichi Maebara arrives in Hinamizawa. He makes friends, he plays club games with a group of cheerful girls after school. The village is peaceful, the people are warm, and then something shifts. A question about the village's past, a festival called Watanagashi, and the slow creeping realization that something in Hinamizawa is deeply, fundamentally wrong. Here's where it gets terrifying. Higurashi is a mystery built on repetition. Each arc resets, the same characters, the same village, the same starting point. But each reset reveals a different version of events, a different path to catastrophe. And the catastrophes are genuinely horrifying. Characters you've grown to like across several episodes turn violent without warning. The shift is never telegraphed. It arrives suddenly, completely, and the contrast between who these characters seem to be and what they become is one of the most effective horror techniques in anime. The real nightmare of Higurashi isn't the violence, it's the paranoia, because the series makes you distrust everyone. After the first reset, you never fully relax around any character. You watch their behavior differently, you look for signs. You start pattern matching, trying to predict which version of events this arc is heading toward. And that pattern of suspicion, once activated, doesn't stay inside the show, it bleeds out. You start watching real people the same way, looking for the hidden thing beneath the surface, wondering which version of someone you're actually seeing. Higurashi understood something about psychological horror that very few series do. The most effective fear isn't the monster you can see, it's the doubt that makes you question everything you thought you knew. That doubt is the real infection Higurashi leaves behind, and there is no cure for it once you've been exposed. Serial Experiments Lane. The internet is not a tool, the internet is a place, and places have weight. Serial Experiments Lane aired in 1998, before the internet had become the infrastructure of daily life, and somehow it understood what the internet would become better than almost anything that has come since. Lane Iwakura is a quiet, disconnected girl who begins receiving messages from a classmate who died. The classmate says she has simply moved her consciousness into the wired. That death doesn't have to mean disappearance. What follows is one of the most genuinely unsettling explorations of identity, reality, and digital existence ever committed to animation. Lane slowly loses the boundaries between herself and the network. She stops being sure what is real. She stops being sure who she is. The real horror of Serial Experiments Lane is not the mythology it builds, it's the feeling it creates. Textualize. Textualize is not an anime many people finish. It is relentlessly bleak from the first episode. It takes place in a dying underground city called Lucas, built beneath the surface of the earth, cut off from the world above. The protagonist barely speaks. The plot unfolds slowly, almost deliberately withholding information, and the world it builds is one of the most genuinely hopeless environments in all of anime. Factions fight over territory in a city that is already falling apart. People lose limbs and replace them with mechanical prosthetics, not because technology has improved their lives, but because their lives are violent enough to require it. And underneath all of it is a question the series is slowly building toward. What happens to a society that has given up on the future? The answer Textualize provides is devastating, not dramatic or cinematic, just cold, methodical, and completely without hope. Here's where it gets genuinely disturbing. The final episodes of Textualize are some of the most nihilistic content ever produced in the medium. The series earns every moment of that nihilism. It didn't arrive there cheaply. It built toward it episode by episode, stripping away every reason for optimism until there was nothing left. But let's talk about how it does that, because the method matters as much as the outcome. Textualize introduces you to Ichis, a fighter who loses an arm and a leg early in the story following a brutal altercation with a crime organization. He doesn't handle it gracefully. He doesn't find inner strength. He rages against it. He suffers. And then he is given prosthetic replacements made from Texhanalize, a material that bonds with living tissue in ways that blur the line between the organic and the mechanical. At first, this seems like a survival story, a man rebuilding after devastation. But Texhanalize isn't interested in rebuilding. It's interested in showing you what a world looks like when rebuilding is no longer an option available to anyone. Lucas is not a city in decline. It's a city in the process of dying. The three major factions fighting over it, the Organo, the Rakan, and the Class, are not fighting for anything that could save it. They're fighting over who gets to control the ruins, over who gets to claim the corpse. And the series presents this with a clarity that becomes genuinely unsettling the longer you sit with it. There's no hidden resistance. No secret plan, no character who has figured out a way to save Lucas and just needs the right moment. There is no saving Lucas. That possibility doesn't exist in the story, and the series commits to that absence completely. Here's where things become something beyond disturbing. There's a place above Lucas called the Surface. The people of Lucas believe it's a paradise, a world of light and possibility that exists just above the underground city they've been trapped in for generations. Then a group of visitors arrives from the surface, and what they represent is one of the most devastating reveals in anime. The surface isn't a paradise. The surface is a graveyard. The people above ground didn't build a better world. They built a perfect world, achieved everything they could have wanted, and then found that perfection offered them nothing left to reach for. Without struggle, without limitation, without the friction of an imperfect world pushing back against them, the people of the surface simply stopped. They lost the will to continue existing. They died out quietly, not through catastrophe, not through war, through the absence of reason to keep going. And the visitors who came to Lucas came because they believed that suffering might be the thing they were missing. That the brutal, grinding, violent life of the underground city might be the only place left where existence still meant something. Let that sit for a moment. The nightmare underneath Texhanalize isn't that Lucas is dying, it's that the alternative to Lucas already died. The series presents you with two possible futures for humanity and reveals that both of them are dead ends. Suffering without hope, or perfection without purpose. There is no third option in this story. There is no synthesis, no path that threads between them. Texhanalize looks at the full range of human possibility and concludes that neither extreme works. And it doesn't flinch from that conclusion. It walks you to the edge of it and lets you look down. The protagonist Ichise moves through the final episodes of the series with the specific quality of a person who has already understood what's happening and simply cannot stop it. Not because he lacks strength, because strength is not the relevant variable anymore. The city is dying. The surface is already gone. And the only thing left is to be present for the end, to witness it, to carry it, to be the last thing in a story that has no more room for heroes. Texhanalize won't keep you up at night because of a single moment. It will keep you up because of what it left in you after you finished it. A silence, a heaviness, the particular weight of a story that looked at everything and decided there was nothing left to say except the truth. And the truth it chose to say is this. There are situations that don't have solutions. There are trajectories that cannot be reversed. There are worlds that were already over before the story about them began. And the honest thing, the genuinely honest thing, isn't to pretend otherwise. It's to look at what remains and witness it with as much clarity as you can carry. And if you're honest with yourself, the reason Texhanalize is so disturbing is that its nihilism doesn't feel wrong. It feels earned. That's the most unsettling thing about it. Not that the world it builds is hopeless, but that you find yourself unable to argue with why. Because the series made its case, methodically, honestly, without decoration. And somewhere in the process of watching it, it made you feel the weight of a world that chose the truth over comfort, and decided that was enough. Final verdict. What separates the anime on this list from standard entertainment is a simple thing. They are honest in a way that most stories refuse to be. Berserk is honest about what betrayal costs. Evangelion is honest about what isolation costs. Made in Abyss is honest about what obsession costs. Vinland Saga is honest about what hatred costs. Higurashi is honest about what paranoia does to the way you see everyone around you. Texhanalize is honest about what despair looks like when it goes all the way to the end. And Lane is honest about what it means to exist in a world where the boundaries between self and network have already started to blur. None of these series offer easy resolutions. None of them end with the feeling that everything is going to be fine.